Hey guys, this is Kelsey and Holly from Sweet Briar Farm. We wanted to talk to you guys about breeding. So if you've got goats, you're thinking you want to breed your goats, there's a few things you need to know. So the first thing is, how do you know when your does are ready to breed? So Holly here is a Nigerian Dwarf. She needs to be at least a year old before she can be bred. She should reach about 70% of her full-grown size before she is bred. So for Nigerian Dwarfs, they grow a little more slowly. She's going to take about a year to be ready to breed. Your standard, like full-size dairy goats, they'll reach about 80 pounds in about 8 months, and that's fine for them. They grow a little bit faster, so you can breed them at 8 months old, which for most goats, they're born in the spring. Not all goats, but most goats kid in the spring and then breed in the fall. Some breeds are more stick harder to that seasonal breeding rule than others, and of course there's always exceptions, but that's the idea. So for standard size goats like Nubians, they would be born in the spring and they should be big enough to breed in the fall. But for Nigerians and also our feigning goats, they grow a little more slowly, so they need to be at least a year old before they're bred. But more than just the age, it's their size. They need to be big enough so that their own growth, no thank you Holly, won't be stunted, but also that they can support and deliver their babies. Holly's using my tripod as a scratching post, you knucklehead. So Holly won't go in with a buck until probably this summer. I think we'll let her go until she's well over a year and then try for maybe Christmas break kids. So first thing you need to do is get your doe old enough, big enough to breed. So feeding her, making sure she's got everything she needs to grow and be successful. For making your pairing, you can, how do you choose the right buck for your doe? And since we're just getting started ourselves, I can look at Holly and tell that she's a great goat and has better conformation than Lacey back there in the pen. Lacey's another Nigerian Dwarf. She kidded yesterday. And Holly has better conformation than Lacey, but I would struggle to explain well to you why that's the case. So my best advice is find a more experienced breeder who's willing to take the time to walk you through it and can explain why their goats are good goats for breeding. Why are they really good examples of that breed? And if you're using registered goats in your herd, you can use the data available to you through the registry to help make good choices. So our goats here are all registered. Holly and the rest of our dairy goats are all registered in the American Dairy Goat Association, the ADGA. Starla, our one mini Nubian, the beautiful black and white tricolor over there, Starla is registered in the MDGA, the Miniature Dairy Goat Association. And our feigning goats are in the myotonic goat registry, but these registries track data on the animals, so you can see how many kids they've had. Do they usually have singletons? Do they usually have multiples? And specifically in the ADGA and the MDGA, they also track milk production. So if you're breeding dairy goats and you want to make sure that you're breeding goats with good milking ability, but also conformation for long, healthy lives, you can use the data available there. So in the ADGA, there's a few different ways they gather that data. One is linear appraisal. Linear appraisal is where you have a representative from the ADGA comes to your farm and they take different measurements on your goats and they use those to give your goats a score. So scores in the 90s are awesome, and then the lower they go, the less awesome those scores are. But you can use those scores to identify what are the strengths of different animals. So if there's an animal that's got 90 for some metric, maybe like the width of their escutcheon or something, or another attachment, you'd know that that's a benefit that they might bring to strengthen a weakness in your own herd. So linear appraisal data can be very valuable as both a buyer and a breeder. The milk production data is also very useful. So for females, that would show up as star M or M star, milking stars. So if a doe meets like a benchmark for milk production, including protein content, butter fat content, and just sheer volume, they can earn their milk star. And that's a way for you to know that that goat comes from a line that has really good milk production genetics. And each successive generation of daughters that earns their milk star, the number goes up. So like a first doe in her line to get it would be an M star goat. If her daughter earns it, then she'd be a 2-star M. If the granddaughter also earns it, then she'd be a 3-star M, and so on. So that's a great way to track milk production, and you can also look back in their pedigrees and see how much that's been inherited. And then for the bucks, they have something similar called a star B or a plus B, and that's got to do with Holly. Get down. For bucks, the star B and the plus B tells you the same thing. How many of their kids, their doelings, have gone on to earn their milk stars, or how many of their maternal ancestors have earned their milk stars. So it's just another way to visualize the heritability of that milk production, which is important for choosing breeding animals. So you've got your does, you bought good does that come from healthy herds. You've seen animals on that herd that are older and still in good condition and productive. Their udders aren't dragging on the ground, their legs are straight, their backs are straight. They're happy, healthy animals. Now you need to go find a buck. So let's head to the buck pen. All right, so you've got your does ready, and now you need to figure out what buck are you going to pair with your doe. So we've got 3 different herd sires. So this little guy, Broseph, he's going to be our Nigerian Dwarf herd sire. He's got a really impressive pedigree with lots of star Bs and star Ms. And he comes from a farm with a breeder who really knows what she's doing. And that's important, to find a breeder who's willing to answer your questions and help kind of mentor you and walk you through things. This little guy in the middle is Clark Griswold. Clark is a feigning buck. We picked him up on a trip to Tennessee because that's where the breed is from, Tennessee. So we're really excited to get to bring some of those genes up to Michigan where we live. And then this guy here, Jimmy's going to be our Nubian herd sire. So 3 different breeds of goats to breed our 3 different breeds of girls. But each of them has really impressive pedigrees. So when you're looking for your herd sire, a herd sire should be an animal that's really exceptional. They're really at the top of the game for their breed. So that the kids we get from these boys and our does are better than the generation the does are from. So you're always trying to breed better goats, healthier goats that live long and happy lives. Well, they're so much fun. So some considerations for your bucks. Bucks have different dietary needs than the does. They will need some grain when they're little guys and they're putting on, they're busy growing, they need more energy, and they will need more support when they're in rut also. But you have to be really careful with male goats, wethers or bucks, that you don't give them too much calcium. They can develop urinary calculi, which is a blockage in the urethra, and it's very painful and it can be deadly. So that's something that you can prevent by making deliberate diet choices. So you probably need to find different kinds of hay than what you feed your does. So you'd want to limit the amount of alfalfa, and you're going to limit the amount of grain. So I know some people will feed like Timothy hay pellets as a treat for their bucks instead of alfalfa pellets or grain. Then it'll give them something to chew on and keep them busy while you're doing their toenails or something. But won't endanger them. So that's something, they need different food. You're going to need different fencing for your bucks. Bucks they've got one job to do on your farm, and it's what they spend most of their time thinking about. So I need to be especially careful because I have very large goats like Jimmy here, my Nubian, and very small goats like Holly you saw. And I need to make sure that Holly and Jimmy never get to be alone together, because if Holly were to get pregnant with a kid from a big buck like this, it could be so big that she'd need a C-section or it could kill her. So that's something that I need to take on that responsibility for, bringing them all onto the same farm. So you want to prevent unplanned pregnancies. These guys are tiny and cute still, but as they get older and more mature, bucks pee on themselves. The ladies love it. They'll pee on their heads, they'll pee on their legs, they'll pee on everything. So they become very smelly. You'll want to make sure you set up your buck pen in such a way that you can put in fresh food and water without having to go in with them all the time. And teaching your goats good manners right from the start when they're little is important too. So having a good relationship with your animals and also designing your setup in such a way that you don't have to go in and have smelly pee-covered Jimmy jumping on you every day is a good thing too. So if you're going to breed your goats, you need to have separate independent setups for does and bucks so that they're not going to be around each other. So speaking of special setups, when kidding time comes, you're going to need other special arrangements. So we've got Lacey in the next pen over here, who kidded yesterday. Lacey's in our birthing pen. She's the only adult goat in this pen. So I don't have to worry about my other does pecking on her kid. She's got space. Everything's clean. So it's very important when kids are born that they have clean bedding. You don't want them getting any poop in their mouths, or it can cause real problems for them as their rumens are just getting started and developing their microbiome to help break down their food. So you need to have a space for a birthing pen where your mom and her baby can live in peace. We also have a kid warmer set up over here for her kid. So it's just a 55-gallon barrel, tips upside down with a heat lamp in there. But it stays nice and warm, and I'll leave that heat lamp set up in there for him for probably the first 2 days, as long as the weather doesn't get super cold. I don't like to leave the heat lamps on any longer than I have to because they are a fire risk. So I always screw them on the walls if I can, or this one in here, we're not using it anymore for the boys, but I have a heavy strap that I screwed into the walls around it and into the barrel so it can't tip over. But more than one barn has burned down because of these heat lamps. Well, they work, but there are risks associated with them. So we try to minimize how much we use them. The far pen over there is where my pregnant does are awaiting their turn in the birthing pen. So you see Phyllis is the white and gold doe right there. She's actually Lacey's daughter from 2 years ago. And Phyllis and Karen, check out right, they're going to be our next two does up for birthing. So we're going to have, Mike's going to put in a gate here, so I'll have two separate birthing pens. They don't have to be huge, but there needs to be enough space, and they need to be alone so they can't, to keep the kids safe, basically. So I've got like a staging pen for my does that are pregnant, and then when they come into labor or they're getting close to their due dates, I'll put them solo into a birthing pen. But they still need to be able to see other goats so they're not stressed out. They're herd animals, they need to be with their buddies. So we've got a staging pen, birthing pens, and then soon these boys are gonna have to go find, we'll get them out into a buck pen, and then this will be like a nursery pen where mamas with, you know, week-old babies will come and hang out, and eventually we'll have a herd for all the girls and a herd for all the boys together. All right, so those are my thoughts for now about breeding. If you guys have any other questions or other things you'd like me to talk about or share our experiences with, I'm happy to do that. You know, this is a how we do it video. It's not the only way or the best way. It's what we found is working for us. If you have other things that have worked well for you, we'd love to hear about it too. So thank you guys so much. We really appreciate all our viewers and getting to share our adventure in farming with you all. So thank you for watching.